Hi, welcome back to Ignite. I am so excited to have my next guest with us. You all are going to hear from an expert. Her name is Kimberly Dymond. Yup, that shiny diamond that we get to see. She is an advocate for authentic leadership and fearless self expression. And she's going to help us navigate one of the toughest challenges in leadership: how to be heard in a room when it matters the most. Now, how many of us can talk about struggling and not being heard when you need to be heard, especially when decisions are being made? Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you, Vicky. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you so
And I'm
much.
so happy to have you because I know you're going to give us some nuggets and tips that the audience is going to walk away with just truly, truly inspired. Let's start off with what holds people back from speaking up in high stakes rooms.
Hmm. Well, I did a little statistics on this, and 70% of people have anxiety when it comes to speaking in front of people in high stakes situations. So leaders can face that when they're talking to board members or senior leadership when it comes to company performance.
Mhm.
And 40 to 50% of the employees who are in meetings with other counterparts or their hiring managers or other leaders are fearful of speaking up as well. And I think a lot of that has to do with being judged. Also, the repercussions of their comments.
Mhm.
Will there be any kind of retaliation or changes in dynamics because
Mhm.
maybe their answers weren't in alignment with the group? So
Mhm.
I think the number one thing is fear of judgment, though. I think that people are scared that their speaking skills, the way that they present, is not going to come across the way they would like. There's various aspects of being judged in that situation, right? One of them is being unprepared. That can make it a little bit worse if someone's put on the spot, they're not prepared. It can kind of rattle their confidence. The dynamics of the group can also affect them if
Mhm.
they're presenting to a team where they feel intimidated, or in some cases, some people feel like what they say or how they present is intimidating.
Mhm.
Um, so there's a couple there, and then repercussions, as I mentioned. Again, if what they have to share, if they feel what their value is and what they want to propose isn't in alignment, is that going to change the dynamics in the future when they want to have conversations with the
Mhm.
individuals on the team or the leaders or be present in a meeting? So there's a lot of different things that make people uncomfortable when they get into a setting like that. I think we've all been there,
Mhm.
but there's ways to prepare for that. But I think that the judgment is probably the number one thing. How will I be judged? How will I be judged on how I'm speaking? How will I be judged on what I have to say? Is what I bring to the table, is it, have quality to it? That type of thing.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Having sat in many corporate boardrooms and sat around the table and listened to others speak, there's a certain amount of nervousness. There's that anxiety and really being able to articulate the knowledge that you have, that you know, and not
Right.
worried about the things that are going on around you is very hard.
Right.
It's not like it's easy. That's a skill. And in that skill means that you have to build that confidence, which brings me to my next question. How can someone, in your opinion, build real confidence in their voice, especially in a male dominated space or industry?
Well, I think that the number one thing is to come into this with a strategy and an assertiveness that comes from knowing the content. You know what? You need to come in with knowledge. That's going to be one of the key things. I mean, we've all male dominant environments. We've all been in those environments, and they're very much data, statistic driven individuals. Their minds think more analytically in most cases. I'm not trying to say that men do not have feelings or anything like that,
Right.
but they just tend to lean towards those. So knowing your content and being confident about what you're bringing into this discussion, practicing in advance, okay? Just, getting your bearings with the information that you're bringing. Body language. Very important to come in and adopt an open posture. You don't want to, you don't want to come across as closed off or defensive. You want to make eye contact. I think that people want to see that eye contact. They'll feel more engaged, and I think you'll have more reception to what you're saying. Learning to speak clearly, reinforce with that confidence that what you're saying has value. Uh, and I think that what you can start with if is self-talk. Do affirmations that counteract self-doubt. Your insights are valuable. Like what you have to say is important to you. It will come across important. And so if you have that self-talk before you go in, that what I have to say is important, don't doubt it,
Mhm.
that will definitely come across and be more receptive in that type of a dominating environment.
Mhm.
Um, Again, preparing, cannot say that enough. I think that is
Mhm.
highly crucial. Your ducks in a row when you go in. Focus on the value that you bring, the perspective. Is it unique? Is it something that no one's heard of before? If you're passionate about it, they're going to see that, and they're going
Mhm.
to dive into that for you.
Mhm.
Okay, and they're
Mhm.
going to buy into that.
Mhm.
Sometimes you do have to address biases, but respectfully call out any misconceptions. You don't really want to make any blanket statements relative
Mhm.
to that environment.
Mhm.
That's it's not the place for that. Consistent consistent practice and self-awareness,
Yeah,
crucial. Yeah,
yeah.
if you practice how you want to speak, how you want to present, watch yourself in the mirror. Look at what we have here
Mhm.
today, video. I mean, videotape yourself so you can really self-critique before
Mhm.
you get yourself into that environment, and it'll help you feel more confident about your approach and how you look. And the more you
Mhm.
do it, the better you'll get at it.
That's for sure. And I think, one of the other things from my experience that has truly shown, not only do you practice in the mirror and look at your nonverbals and what you're saying, but I think it's also important that in your content, that you're using a lot of fact-based and not feeling-based that people can deny. However, from my perspective, there's one word that you can use a feeling that no one can deny. And that's the power of I. No one can tell you how I feel. I can tell you my perceptions, my feelings. You can't take that away. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to say that that's the way it is, but it's my perception. But I think you balance that out exactly with what you said. Nothing that is offensive, nothing that is going to be condescending,
Right,
nothing that is going to be misunderstood or looked at as a bias. But more importantly, it's been my experience. Okay, that's your experience. That's a
that's
fact
right.
to you, right? I'm not saying it
That's right.
happened to anyone else. And I think those kinds of things just enable us more and more to be authentic
Mm-hmm.
because that's the
Mm-hmm.
other thing.
Yep.
Going into a room of how do I ensure that I'm authentic so that I'm empowered when I go in this room and I'm talking about what I'm doing. I'd love to get your thoughts about that and any strategies that you have used around that so that you are feeling more comfortable and not like I'm a fake character. I'm going in here and being an actor. I'm putting a facade, but I'm really being me.
Sometimes that's hard. People aren't comfortable with who they, with what they're bringing, and so I would just say, first off, know the content of the meeting. Really get your hands around an agenda. Find out what the topics are going to be, and then understand the key questions that you want to raise to the meeting, right? So not just what you think others want, but what's really important to you that's important to or relative to what this meeting concerns, okay, or what the topic is, okay.
Mhm.
And like you said, be authentic, be confident in sharing your thoughts, okay, because they're just as reasonable and thought through as other people's, right? If you have thoughtful questions early on, then you can establish a presence. You can set the tone of the conversation easily by the way that you bring it to the table, right?
Mhm.
You get to set the tone,
Mhm.
and this will help boost your confidence, put you more in a relaxed state if you step into it early on and kind of set the tone. that's how I like to do it. Like I want to go in with my questions. Like I want
Yeah.
to know what I want to know, and I want to be prepared to ask them, not hold back. If it seems like the individuals are um, not ready to talk about that, I think that that's going to come through, right?
Mhm.
You'll have to read the room. Okay, that's all. Like you've got
That's
to
the
read the
key.
room. Yep, you have to read the room. Absolutely. But it will empower you. It will make you more confident if you prepare in advance. You have those questions that mean something to you. It's all, like
Mhm.
you mentioned, that's you being authentic. You don't want to
Mhm.
prepare questions that you think others want to hear. You will, from their perspective is what I'm saying. If you think it's relative to the audience that you're going to take this back to, then yeah, you would prepare questions according to that audience, right? That you need that information for. But again, all about preparing. I can't say that, do your homework, find out who's going to be in the meeting, whatever you might know about their situation or their team or what have you, so that you can be comfortable when you're in that
And
space.
to that point, I think what you're really saying is allowing yourself to control the narrative. You control the narrative by your preparation and the questions you ask and how prepared you are when you go in that room. Such great insights. We're going to take a station break. And when we come back, I want to talk about getting ready for that next move and what that looks like. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Ignite. Boy, I hope you get a chance. If you didn't see that last episode, I hope you tune back in because Kimberly was giving us some great, great insights about preparation and being ready and going into a room in male dominated environments and having that confidence and what it really means to be prepared. So go back and listen if you missed it because there was some great information there. But I want to switch the subject a little bit, Kimberly. I really want to get your perspectives when a person is saying, I'm almost there. I feel like I'm getting there. I feel like I'm ready to get to that next level. How do you know you're ready to level up? But then you say, I'm not really sure how to do that. I'm not sure what that looks like. So I want to get a little bit more into those insights. So, how can someone tell the difference between a plateau and a pivot point?
That's a good point. The I think the difference between plateau and pivot. Plateau is when you are at that point where you feel like you've done what you can in the role that you are in. You might be feeling limited to the growth based on the organizational structure or just in general. You're stagnant, you're a little bit bored, and you're not really sure exactly where this path may go if you stay, within this particular environment or role. Pivot point is when someone is deliberately trying to make an adjustment to their career or their industry. They're starting to look at what they would do to make those adjustments, next steps, goals. What do we need to do to take those next steps, right? Um, so both are potentially pivotal situations, but one is intentional in creating a new path, while the other is more of a perseverance in current state. Okay, so there's a lot to consider when you pivot. Again, it can be a drastic pivot or it can be a minor pivot. It just depends on where you are in that environment and or stage.
Okay. Are there certain signs that tell you which one from your perspective or your experience that says this one feels more like a pivot versus, you know, um, versus a plateau that I'm just stuck? Are there certain behaviors or signs or anything from your experience that you've seen?
Um, yes, people are afraid.
Okay.
Sometimes when they're in that stage where they're looking at the change,
Hmm.
right? Then they get fearful. So
Okay.
what can I do this? Can I take this on?
Mhm.
Okay. And then they might stay. So then they will stay status quo and then reevaluate again, right? So it's a timing thing in my perspective, in my
Okay.
point of view. Okay, it's
Hmm.
where you are at this stage. If, like you said, if you are ready to make the next step, are there things that you need to do? Do you need to take um, certain courses? Do you need to have certain experiences behind you to take that next step? Are you ready? Strengths and gaps that you might have with relative to making that change. If you feel that you aren't there, then you may not pivot. You
Hmm.
may stall. Okay, you
Hmm.
may stay in that stagnation until you evaluate. But anyway, I to your point, I think it's just it's more of a fear of people not making sure that they have what they need personally or professionally to take that next step.
And I, it's also been my experience that when, especially as you're talking about that, is being aware of what it takes to get to that next step. And then having self-awareness to say, do I really have it? But being honest with yourself, what you have and what you don't have, because you brought up a very good point. I got to know where my gaps are. And so understanding that allows you to be able to fill them to say, do I need to do something further to elevate? Or am I not? Or do I already have it, but I'm too afraid or too shy or,
Right,
too
right.
inwardly focused to let it be seen so that others can see that I'm ready to move forward. And then being able to read the tea leaves around the pivot, if you will, right? Is it
Exactly.
the right
Right.
timing?
Right. It's the timing. Sometimes it is. It's timing and actually having, like you were talking about, actionable goals, a vision. It's if you create that vision, what are the steps to get you there? Are you there? What needs to be done? Invest in your own learning and development so that you feel more comfortable when you are really ready to make that pivot. And sometimes, sometimes that pivot's right where within your organization and you're asking for more work, or to expand your skill set, and you're uncomfortable asking for that because you're not 100% sure if that's going to be received or what you might still need, right? But you're speaking up because you're feeling stagnant.
Hmm. Hmm. And it's interesting when we start talking about pivot and moving forward, the fact that we also have to be able to read the environment around us. Sometimes, and you know this better than anybody as a business owner, you read the market, you read the trends, you read the things that are in your control and outside of your control to say,
Yes.
is it time for me to pivot the service offerings that I have? Is it time for me to pivot on different things that I'm doing because people are absorbing information or content differently, or people want,
Right.
it used to be, oh, we could send things in text and people will read it. Now people don't like to read, they want video. They don't want long video, they want short vignettes. They don't want, long explanation, just give me the answer. It's all these kinds of things that we talk about, but having that awareness to
Yes.
know that, these are the things that are also important to talk about pivoting is your environmental things, that some are within your control and some are not.
Some aren't. And, you can also surround yourself with people that are like mentors, people that you
Yes.
can use as a sounding board to motivate you and to say, I'm interested and this is my thoughts. What do you think? Do you think I need to do this? Someone who is in that space, right, that can give you that insight that you could take with you and make you feel a little bit more confident and more comfortable when you are looking to make that pivot. And there's a lot of people that I'm sure would be willing to give you an individual some help and support in that space so that they can make the proper choices.
Well, in your experience and working with people and going down this avenue, what is the one thing that you find that people most often overlook when they're ready to grow and move on? They just overlook it. They don't pay attention to it and say, "Oh, yes, I need to grow. I need to move forward." But they're not paying attention to something that they should to know that they're ready. Anything come to mind?
I would say that their preparedness.
Okay.
Some people get excited. They want to make this change. They innately feel like I can do this. I know I can. But you really need to take small steps, in my opinion. Don't just go all the way in until you're prepared. And I think that that's where some people get excited. They want to make that, they want to make that next step. They want to move on, and they want that inspiration again. And yet they're not quite there yet. And you may not be, okay, may not be 100%, but you want to feel pretty comfortable that this is the direction that you want to go, because, what are your long-term goals, and how will this affect you personally and professionally? Not just from your day to day. I mean, overall, how will this affect you? But I think people tend to get too excited and not take the steps to prepare.
And that's so important what you just said. We're a total human being. And so all aspects of our life, we have to think about. I used to always say to a lot of my mentees is that you're learning whether I need to add another tool to my toolbox so I'm ready for the next construction site that I'm being asked to go and build, right? And so
Right,
if I need another
right,
tool, there's something else I got to go get. But if I
right.
have what I need to go and to move forward, right, I can continue to progress. I can continue to do the things that I'm doing in that arena. And when it gets to the point I've used all my tools, I know how to use them, I've built everything I can build, I can't do anymore, then it may be time to grow and get that next tool. Because there's always the next thing we can grow and learn.
Always the
Either
next
we
thing.
go from a manual
Exactly.
screwdriver to an electric one, right? There's
And pretty
always
soon it'll just
things.
materialize by itself. You won't even need a machine. It'll just be
Exactly,
there.
exactly. And to that point, what's the one powerful question from your perspective as I talk about, moving forward, but that we should ask ourselves before taking the next leap, before we
Well,
get
just like
ready
I
to
said,
take that next leap?
well, that's what I think that's kind of what I just ended with earlier was, how will this affect me professionally and
Personally,
personally?
okay.
That is what I say take away. You don't want to, I would not look at one component versus the other, right? Because if this new role is going to be extremely time consuming, maybe you're going to be traveling 75% of the time and now you're not with your family anymore, but it's a great opportunity, and those types of things. So balance those out, like really sit down and understand what those are. I think that's my biggest takeaway for anybody trying to take that make that pivot into a new industry, a new career path, is to really understand how that's going to affect your
You know,
environment.
and that's so true. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but my philosophy has always been when we make a decision, every decision has a consequence, even if it's good or bad. A
This is
good
true.
decision can be great for you, but the consequence may be, as you mentioned, less time with family.
Hmm.
A not so good decision can have consequences of things that you have to deal with that, are ramifications of making that decision when you do it. But every decision has a consequence, good and bad. Would you agree
Good
with
and
that?
bad. Absolutely, absolutely. Whether it's the role you're taking on, you know, directly related to the people you'll be engaging with, or how it will affect your personal life, there's going to be consequences to that decision. Hmm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kimberly, for joining us. This has been
Thank you.
great. And
Thank you.
thanks for reminding us growth doesn't come from knowing all the answers,
That's
but
right.
from being willing to ask the right questions. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
No
Been
problem. And
lovely.
for those of you that are watching, if you love watching Ignite, you can get us on Now Media TV show, whether it's live or on demand anytime. Your clock, not ours. Just download your free Now Media TV app on Roku and get instant access to all bilingual content. And that's great, both English and Spanish. And we have it from business to news to lifestyle to cultures. It's available 24 by 7. Again, at your time, not ours. Just search Now Media TV on Roku device, and then you'll never ever miss a moment. Thanks so much for joining us again on another episode of Ignite. Keep your strength going, keep things happening, and keep that fire burning. See you next time.